Could you give us an update on what's happening in the Chinese property market and where things stand now?
Sure. It's in the deepest down cycle it's been, at least for the last couple of decades, after those deleveraging efforts by policymakers have ended up working all too well. I think new starts are down by 30%, probably 60% from the peak. Housing sales are down by about a third. New starts are down by about 2/3. And about 2/3 of the top private developers haven't been able to service their debt and are basically in runoff mode. There is some policy response. There have been some rate cuts, and mortgage rates have been lower, but those haven't really helped very much because the wider backdrop is still one of lower consumer confidence.
Is it surprising that the leadership allowed the deleveraging in the property market to go as far as it has? And you mentioned mortgage rate cuts, but what would be the best way for leaders to help support economic growth in China?
I don't think it's surprising that policymakers have been trying to deleverage the property sector because they don't want a repeat of what happened in Japan, for example, in the 90s, where you had an asset bubble that got out of hand and ended up dampening economic growth for much longer. I would probably expect that deleveraging to continue, both in real estate as well as in local government finances. But I think the policy response hasn't been as much as some investors have expected for the overall economy, because when you have a deleveraging process like the one we're seeing in real estate, typically there is easier monetary and fiscal policy to try to cushion overall growth. And China does have a lot of policy options in the sense that it's kind of the opposite of a lot of other major developed economies. There's no inflation today in China. In terms of monetary policy, China's never done quantitative easing. It never really eased monetary policy very much, even during COVID. And in terms of fiscal policy, China didn't really give cash handouts on a national level, unlike most other major economies during COVID. Now, whether they want to is another matter. Leadership has tended to be pretty conservative about using fiscal tools, but those options are certainly there if they wish to use them.